everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Gratitude Podcast program. I am so excited. A few years ago, a friend of mine suggested that I go to Mexico to San Miguel de la Andre to a program called Living Freedom. And I didn't know anything about it, but I was in the personal development world and wanted to grow. And I just got on a plane and went there, and I met two of the most beautiful humans I've ever met in my life, Diamond and River Jameson. And I went down there and I went through this Living Freedom program. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but they had such a beautiful story about their lives and their coming together. And I ended up really getting into the Living Freedom program and then went down there and spent some one-on-two time with them. I did an individual program where they taught me how to cook some delicious meals and address some things with my parents. And it was just such a beautiful experience that I am so deeply honored to have River and Diamond here on our Gratitude Podcast show. Thank you very much for being here and welcome to our show.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert. I'm Diamond, and this is River.
I'm River.
Yes, that's important to know because it could go either way, right?
Yes, they're very androgynous names that way. So thank you for having us today. We appreciate that.
Yeah. And would you tell us a little bit about how you met? I believe it was up in the mountains in Colorado.
Sure. We met in Aspen, Colorado.
It was 47 years ago.
47 years ago. Our anniversary was on the 26th of this month. So just a few days ago, we celebrated our 47th.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. We were both healers already and guides. And Diamond was the head director of the Aspen Institute for Whole Living. And I was a young facilitator who was doing courses and also one-on-one work with people. And I also was working as an intuitive for animals and babies. But I also had a course, and his institute called me and asked me if I'd like to come to Aspen. I was living in southern New Mexico and on the Rio Grande River, and he asked me if I'd like to come to Aspen. So we did do that, and he sponsored my course. And over that time, we realized what an incredible alignment we had over just a week or two of knowing one another. And he interviewed me on his television show, which he had at the time as well. And through that time, it was just really obvious that something major was happening between us and that we were being brought together in a significant way. And within a couple of weeks, we were doing our first event together. And we've been working together for 47 years since then, and also have had the Total Integration Institute, where we teach people about a whole integral life practice. And we have worked in businesses, we've worked in mud huts, we have been corporate advisors. We have a course called Awakening Excellence that's for building business teams, but we also have the Living Freedom that are tools for everyday living for people, of how to have every single experience that we have be part of our practice and our process, and how to assimilate everything and make it into wisdom rather than wounds. We also have a private practice, and there's many things that we do together, in that way. So it's been a fabulous partnership, and we're in our 70s now, and we're still very engaged with one another and with our work.
Yeah, very engaged and very in love. We're really given an amazing gift of this relationship, because there's not drama going on here. We're very stable and connected. And the end result of it being able to put our energy towards contributing to others rather than doing relationship resolutions. I mean, when we have our moment, we know how to create a resolution, but we're not in a problematic relationship. We're very bonded, very easy, very connected.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is the difference between having a dynamic process together, which we do, and we're constantly growing together, and we know how to resolve. We have amazing tools. And so we use those tools, and it's being responsible in that way fully in the relationship has allowed us to continue to just move through whatever we need to move through and grow. But the focus is on our co-creation.
Yeah. You are the most beautiful couple I've ever met. And, kind of even going back, before you met, you have such interesting stories and backgrounds. Do you want
Yes.
to share with us a little bit about that? Like how your mind developed so that when you came together, there was this beautiful connection. It's just amazing what experiences you've had in your mind development.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. It's interesting because for both of us, and I'll speak for myself here, is that mainly as we were young, there wasn't anyone else that we looked up to that was in the growth movement at that time. But we just knew there was more to life and to reality than ordinary reality.
Yeah.
That we wanted something more. We knew there was something more extraordinary and more multidimensional. So it put us on our personal quest to seek that and create that for ourselves. And I know for myself, before I met River, I started my own growth process. But one of the things I did is I lived in the wilderness for a long period of time, for a good year and a half, in a 9 by 9 tent outside of Aspen, Colorado, and snowshoed in during the winter. And it was really gave me what I needed in terms of the ground and the safety. It's really where I learned about how to have functional relationships, is having a relationship with the earth. And then that conveyed into me being able to be in relationship with River.
Yes. And both of us had that experience of where we had come home to ourselves in meaningful ways. And I had been in a first relationship and had a child. So I had a 3-year-old child when I met Diamond and was separated in that relationship. But I had become a young healer. And my father was indigenous Mexican, and I felt like really drawn to learn about how to get well myself and how to help other people get whole and well. So I had lived outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the desert on a piece of land, and I'd had a big council teepee where I did healings with people, and I had been part of the Native American church, and I had just kept on developing myself, and I had the first organic natural foods restaurant, one of the first ones in the nation in Santa Fe at that time. And so I was really into natural foods, into herbs. I became an herbalist, into healing, but I also was really developing stronger and stronger intuitive capacity. And so I started really getting the information when my daughter was born. I felt like I came into a whole body of knowledge that started coming through me. So I started teaching people how to deal with their emotional experience in a more functional way, of how to have a process and how to start. I felt like we were really early with how to work with trauma, how to let go of the generational patterns that were limiting us, the belief systems, the energy that was blocking us. And so I started that work, and my husband was also working through the Institute, and he had done a lot of Gestalt and a lot of bioenergetics and lived in the wilderness. And I was also really earth connected. So we both had journeys up until that point that allowed us to be ready to connect and to go from there.
To be grounded and pragmatic. It's that combination of full chakra,
Yeah.
where not only our feet are on the ground and the head's in the sky and everything in between. It isn't just thinking or ideas. It's very, very grounded, very pragmatic, very integrated. That's why we call it the Total Integration Institute. And what we care about is total integration.
We have really always cared about what we did being fully embodied and not being spiritual bypassing or just ideas, but really fully grounded. We have raised a bunch of kids, not only our own, but helped other people raise theirs in community, and been in therapeutic community, lived in the wilderness for 7 years, 17 miles outside of Durango in the true wilderness for 7 years. And so we really have this ground, and now we live in central Mexico. I think that one of the things we're really good at is that we're integration specialists, and that we're very good at that. And the other thing is that we have been very caring about the context that we do the work in. We teach people how to shift the entire context of their lives rather than working on all the little factors of also shifting the entire context so that they're working in a context where all of that can happen, where the miracles can occur, where the healing can occur, but it's also really grounded because it's an integral context. So that's also been really important to us.
You know, I didn't start my personal development journey till later in life, but you guys obviously started earlier. And I remember you telling the story of something that happened when you were 4 or 5 years old that kind of gave you some clues as to what your life would look like, possibly.
Yeah.
When did this journey start for each of you? Or did you just go to college and you decide you're going to become therapist? Or, how did this happen so early?
That's
Yeah.
good. That's good.
I think both of us were really sensitive children, and we both had very different experiences, but I think we were really urged on to do something different. And I was a really super sensitive, intuitive, and sometimes sick child. And I had very many alternate experiences when I was young. And also, I was always a futurist. Of always at 3 telling my mom, the man next door is going to die, mommy, and her saying, but don't tell anybody, because she was also
Yes.
intuitive, even though she didn't quite know what to do with it. And so I didn't tell anybody, but a few days later, I watched him die in his yard while he was clipping his hedge and fall over from a heart attack. And so I always knew that I could see things, but it was also a little scary in our culture. And then I learned in first grade, I was sick for a while. And when I went back, I could read at 12th grade level with perfect comprehension. So there was always this aspect of me that was tuned into another way of learning and another way of assimilating experience. And so it was very difficult by adolescence. I was having a very big struggle with it all because it wasn't fitting with the paradigm. And that's part of where I became aware of how important it was that I had a contextual shift.
Yeah.
And that it wasn't just trying to fit myself in somewhere or make what I was knowing and seeing adaptable to the context I was in, because it wasn't relatable at that point. That was only, in the mid 60s. And then I took psychedelics. I took LSD when I was 12. I remember asking the person who gave it to me, saying, and he had been involved in experiences in LA where working with a doctor of doing research with it, and he felt like it would help me, and it did, and it brought me out of the depression I was in, and gave me some hope, really, because I said, "Are other people doing this?" And he said, "Yes," and I said, "Well, then I think there's going to be a place for me." There's going to be people who understand what I'm experiencing. So that really gave me some support, even though that was still only in about 1964, 65. It was very early. So as the 60s went on, I started seeing, oh yes, there was a cultural shift too that I could be part of. And at the same time, I was always really super sensitive. So when I met Diamond, I felt like that he understood who I was and that he'd had an experience with parents who were alcoholic and come through some very difficult childhood experiences, but with a mother who was also very loving and very intuitive and very tuned in. The alcohol was really made such a difficult environment because it brought in domestic abuse and some violence.
Yeah.
So he always felt very committed to get out of that. At the same time, his mother would bring people home saying, "Would you please talk to them? They need your support."
I started my coaching career when I was about 8 years old.
Yeah.
And I just had a
Wow.
natural proclivity of just understanding how things worked. And my mother would bring friends home to talk to me so I could guide them.
Well, it was abuse on one level, right? And we recognized that he was a parentified child, that he was the parent in the situation. So he's had to really, when he was young, do a lot of work with that and let that role go. But at the same time, we both knew we were headed someplace else. And that Diamond always knew that he was headed out of that whole situation. And that he really cared about it. And as a young man, went off to Europe and started doing Gestalt and bioenergetics and yoga, and owned a handmade guitar store. And he started creating a very different kind of life for himself. So by the time I met him, and he was one of the directors of the Aspen Institute for Whole Living, was working with people and doing private sessions with people and supporting people in healing and living in the wilderness. He had already changed a lot of things. And so, and definitely made a commitment to a life that was sober and awake and aware.
That's right.
Yeah.
and grounded.
And grounded.
So when you guys got together, it was like love at first sight, as I recall, and you knew that you were meant to be together and to create something together.
Yes.
How did that all work? Were you created the Living Freedom program, or was there some steps along the way? Could you let us know a little bit about that?
Yeah. No, we just kept on working together. And as we worked together, we were seeing what worked for ourselves in our own personal process. And we cared about it being integral. We wanted every single aspect of ourselves to be engaged. We didn't want our business, our parenting, our marriage, our daily life, the way we ate, anything to be outside of this new context that we were creating together. So that was really, really important to us. That was really important to us, is that everything was a part of a whole life. And so we just kept on working at that. And also we were working with a lot of people and seeing what was working and what wasn't working. And when did people have big breakthroughs, and how did they have those big breakthroughs? How did they happen? So we started developing tools and processes that would produce that if the people used those tools and integrated them. So that was part of how the Living Freedom came about. And we started doing more and more of those. And by the time at a certain point, we moved to Marin County, and we were kind of part of that whole 80s awakening in Marin. And we were doing 125 person events at Fort Mason, in San Francisco every month. And so we were experiencing a lot of people coming through, and we kept refining the process and seeing where it could go. So at this point, we're much lower key than that. We don't do those big events anymore, Diamond 78 and 73. And we just want a life that's a little softer, but we're still very engaged. So we're working a lot online. We've got online programs. And then we also, like I said, do some personal work. I do some lectures in town and with our community here. And we've got a group in Berlin, that we do the conscious business with. So we're still engaged very much. And we've got another group we're working with right now who serves underserved pregnant women all over the globe. And we're helping them put their team together and make sure that they're communicating and have an integral process together. So we're still involved in lots of really interesting things. Right now, we're really wanting to get our business training for teams out to people, because we feel like that teams that are working together to create money and to bring more of the money into the conscious community and to serve people with are very, very important right now as far as where we are in the process. It's time for conscious, loving, caring people of integrity to have the money, to have the power to affect the world. So that's one of the things we're serving by creating the Awakening Excellence program. So we're doing lots of things like that, that we're excited about.
The Awakening Excellence program is so good because we really discovered the knack and understanding how to support people and really becoming synergistic, functional partnerships, enthusiastic, co-creating together.
Yeah.
And so they really are able of doing that. It's very exciting work.
Yeah, and we're still, of course, doing Living Freedom online of the tools, and also working one-on-one online as well as in person. So, it keeps evolving. I feel like even the last 2 years, even since the whole pandemic thing of when we couldn't do the big events anymore and we were getting ready to retire from them anyway, but when we shifted that, it's like even since then, we keep on having different life stages. And as we have different life stages, different wisdom comes in. And so we integrate that wisdom into what we do. And so at this time, I would say one thing that we really, really have is a tremendous amount of experiences, including our own mistakes, our own successes, other people's mistakes and successes, whole companies' mistakes and successes, and that we're drawing upon a tremendous amount of experience that I feel so incredibly grateful for.
Part of the end result is we've been able to create really some empowered maps on how to do things. Living Freedom 10 Powers, the team agreements for Awakening Excellence. These maps are been established, vetted, and experienced, and really work very much so.
Yeah. Diamond had a stroke a few years ago, so he's dealing with some neurological tremor and some neurological pain. But even that's been part of the process. And we've been so grateful that we have one another, that we have the tools, and that every experience becomes part of the fertile ground for us to grow
For living and growing.
and for thriving, even within challenges.
Exactly.
Because it's not about never having a challenge. It's like everybody has challenges. It's how do we move through those challenges with how much grace, how much integrity, how much capability, and what's our capacity and resources, and continuing to expand our capacity and resources as multidimensional energy beings, and let our awareness keep opening to who we are and what we're really capable of. And I don't think that the challenges are anything but the next step in doing that, whatever they are.
Challenge to me equals opportunity.
Yeah, opportunity. An opportunity to grow. Yeah.
I got so many questions, but first I wanted to just ask you, could you describe for our audience what living freedom is and maybe the 10 pillars that you have or some version of that so that people just understand what living freedom really is?
One thing I'll say about living freedom is it's a toolbox. It's an integral toolbox for how to have our every single day and moment be a whole, integral, loving, compassionate, self-compassionate process of becoming who we really are, and of being able to have everything and anything that we experience or that we feel or that we are or that we experience in the world be part of that process, and nothing being outside of it. No part of us being outside of it. We care so much about knowing that every single aspect of us has value, that every single aspect of us is precious, that there are no bad aspects, no bad parts to us, that it's about healing and integrating and enlightening and giving parts new jobs and becoming our own best parental spirit, and being willing to take that ultimate responsibility for our lives and for ourselves, and then interacting with the world in a way that works. And so the 10 powers is really not a linear process. It's a dynamic, moving, living process that keeps on delivering tools to us to utilize at different times, including things like classic tools like meditation and listening and developing our intuition, but also somatic processes, movement, emotional release, nervous system regulation, of being able to listen deeper, of being able to start looking at what's true and what's the next true thing. There's always some next true thing in our process. So we don't necessarily need to know what the next 30 steps are, but it's how do we tune in and know what the next one is, and begin to develop true self-trust, knowing how to create safety for ourselves, because I think real true healing is when we feel held by ourselves and safe enough with ourselves that we can bloom, and that in that place, we don't need real heavy confrontation, anymore. It's like a plant, when we take a plant from a context that's not working for it, and it's yellow and it's not getting the nutrients or the light it needs, and we put it in a context where the plant is nurtured, where the plant's receiving the light and the water and the nutrients and everything that it needs, it grows. It's just what it does, right? It's like we don't have to pull every little leaf out. And I think some people would do their process almost like they have to pull every little thing out from themselves and like stay on themselves. And it's like, no, we have to create the love, the safety, the context for ourselves to be met, to really meet ourselves, and to do that reparenting of ourselves, and at the same time to be adult conscious chiefs in our reality. And that if we create that context, that regardless of what we're experiencing or feeling, it's okay to experience everything and to feel everything, that we will grow, because growth is the nature of our beings, that we just do grow. It's how humans do it. All of life evolves if it's given the right experience. And so a lot of the 10 powers is about providing that fertile soil for becoming.
So in that way, living freedom is really nutrient rich.
Yeah.
Nutrient rich. It really allows us to break the trance of ordinary reality.
Yeah.
And allows us to step into an integral, multidimensional, holistic experience.
Yeah.
And so it's really beautiful. And how it's formatted now, it's a 10-week process with 10 modules, about 2-hour modules with a review. So we get a chance to talk to people about what they learned and what questions they might have.
Yeah, so we do that live Zoom review every week so that they can be witnessed, they can ask questions, they can have their experience there with us.
So it's very accessible and very usable approach, but it continues to work. Again, we've been doing that particular work for over 40 years now, so it's very established and it's vetted and works.
You know, it was interesting because when we went from live to the online work, we wondered, was this going to work? Because the live event, you were there. It was very dynamic, very hands-on.
Really fun.
Yes.
And what we've
Really
been
fun.
really interested in hearing from people who have done both is they said, I actually integrated, even though the live experience was unforgettable, that I integrated better in the online experience because it was in 2-hour chunks every week. And I had a whole week to work with those 2 hours.
Digest and assimilate it.
And digest it fully before I went on. And it took 10 weeks to get it all. So I really got it at another level because I could take it in. So we've been really happy to experience that it actually works really well.
And in that training, online training, it also is movement and dance and expressing, releasing.
Yeah.
So it isn't just talking.
Right.
It's
People
not
are just
talking.
sitting in front of their screen.
There's plenty of training, but there's also a lot of somatic activity and breathing and moving and dancing. So it's really fun.
So if we have a guest listening to our show here, and they don't know anything about living freedom or what you're talking about, you've used some beautiful words about multidimensional beings and integration. What would you say to someone that has no clue of what we're talking about as to what this is?
I would say that it really is tuning into what we already are. But that we have just had so much enculturations and so much generational patterns, conditioned patterns. We have been so trained to a particular limited reality view.
Breaking out of the box that doesn't exist.
Yeah. There really is no box, but we can start to feel like there is.
Yeah.
So it's really that willingness to explore, well, what else is there in a way that is safe and sane and grounded. And so that I am not going to spin out, that I'm going to be given tools for that exploration and to do that exploration in a very safe way, to learn how I've always been an emotional being. We always have been, all of us. We've always been energy beings. None of us are really solid. It's like we're 99% energy, like just space that is filled by an energetic field. It's like solidity is a bit of a delusion, right? An illusion. So it's about starting to explore, well, what's really true, but in a way that doesn't overwhelm me. And that if I start to feel overwhelmed, I even have tools for that, so that it is a sane, sober, grounded, embodied development that allows me to just start exploring what's really true about me, what feels like home to me inside here. How can I expand my capacity and resources to be a functional person, to be able to feel feelings and not be overwhelmed by them, but to provide myself safety so I can feel all my feelings, learn from them, listen to the messengers, so that I can have transilience, that ability to transform experience, but to be resilient in it and stronger in it, and to be able to then allow my life to unfold and know that my life is a sacred process, and to start being able to embrace that sacred process in a way, rather than being afraid of it and contracting back from it or constricting back from it, and finally feeling at home in life. So that's what I would say, is that it's already what's happening. It's just about being much more empowered and comfortable in what's happening and being able to work with it a lot better.
One of the key words with this is that it's safe. Safety is the key, that we really create safety in the whole experience. So one feels safe as you move forward. You don't feel overwhelmed. You can feel grounded and safe as you move forward and expand your awareness.
And how does someone create safety for themselves?
You start out by taking a deep breath and get present.
Yeah.
The main reason people aren't safe is because they're not here.
Yeah,
But as soon as you get here
that's right.
and you're in the zone and you're present, then you experience a natural safety.
Yeah. So I think, it's that thing of being willing to treat ourselves like a really compassionate, loving, embodied and attached parent that would have that supplied us with our attachment needs and would have noticed where we were when we were having a feeling and said it's okay to have a feeling, it's all right, so let's take a deep breath together and let's just let that move through your body, and it's okay, you're safe, I'm here. It's like whatever we would have done as an excellent parent, we have that ability now to do it for ourselves and to show up for ourselves that way. And when we do, all the little parts that have been afraid, that have been in fawning and fight and flight and freeze, start to thaw out and feel like, my being is showing up for me. Oh gosh, this is what I've always wanted. I've always wanted to be met. I've always wanted to be connected with. And it goes back to something we always say is that really the core wound that people are carrying is disconnection from ourselves, disconnection from our world, disconnection from nature, disconnection from the source that lives inside of us, from that part of us that knows the truth, that is love, and feeling disconnected. And so we have the power inside ourselves to reconnect. We have the power to say, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. And that whatever you're feeling is okay. Whatever you're experiencing, I'm not going to abandon you. I'm going to be here. I have tools and I'm going to use those tools and I'm going to help you. And it's like the parts usually immediately respond with,
Wow.
thank you. Or
Yeah.
if they have a feeling, they finally feel safe and held enough to be able to have the feeling rather than to be constricted and contracted in the feeling, but safe enough to finally let go and have it, which delivers them to the that we have when we really can get to that place of acceptance. So, that's part of how we create the safety and just what we choose every day. It's like how we select the people in our reality and becoming more aware of our selection process. And as we let go of some of our trauma, we'll start noticing that people tend to select people in their reality who kind of match their original woundedness. And some of it is that's by having those people in our reality, we're confronted with things that we haven't felt and that we have to move through. But we get to a point of going, I don't have to grow that way. I can see these patterns without engaging so dramatically and so dysfunctionally. I can see these patterns. I can see these reflections I create in other people and own them. And I can have the tools for moving through it a little more gracefully, a little more gently, a little more powerfully, so that I can start selecting in a different way and selecting people around me who support me and support who I'm becoming and who see me and who feel me and who also are safe space for me. And that the people who are not, I know how to process that. I know how to own those reflections. I know how to have healthy boundaries. It's like I'm relationally functional in the world. So that I move in the world also in more awareness and more empowerment so that I can serve others better and that I'm also not overwhelmed by my experience. That if I start to feel overwhelmed, I know how to respond to overwhelm. I know how to come back to myself, to nurture myself, to rest, whatever it is I need to be able to, here I am, and to get present and grounded and connected again. So, that's all part of us creating safety. So it's a learning process. It might sound like a huge thing, but we take it step by step and it's a process. It's like, just like we learned anything. It's like when we first learn a new language, it's like at first it's like, oh, wow. But if we take it step by step and break it down and we actually stay with it and we get some good support, pretty soon we're more familiar and we're more comfortable. And that's just the way of learning a new context, really. And we had to do it as a kid, right? And we did it as little kids. And so we can certainly do it now as adults if we've got somebody ourselves all the way there backing us up in a way that we didn't the first time necessarily.
Part of living freedom is that it's the most natural way to go. It's how we are naturally.
Yeah.
So it's tapping into our natural proclivities.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening online, if you want more information or follow up on this, you can contact us on the web at livingfreedom.info.
Yeah,
livingfreedom.info.
livingfreedom.info.
Yeah, you can follow up there.
Yeah, that you can find out everything there.
But when is your next 10-week session starting?
We
You know what? We
do
cycle
one about
them
every
through.
2 months.
We cycle them through, and that also sometimes if somebody wants to come together with a particular group, like say they've got like a group of 4 or 5 friends and they want to do it together, we will also start that group as a pod.
Yes.
So we do that too with people. We really encourage people who have got small businesses, whether it's a startup or a large business, but who have team and are creating team, to tune into the Awakening Excellence information, because we really took it out of what companies, the mistakes companies make, and what they need to learn, and how to give people that learning right away so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel to be a functional team that knows how to get through the growing process of a business. So that's also so we're just really excited about that right now, because we're doing some really great work with some teams that way.
Here's my real question, my big question to you. Are you getting excited ever about hosting in your house again, in-person event?
You know, we may do an in-person event, but we won't do them like we were doing it, because right now, neither of us really wants to be engaged for 5 or 6 days at this point. You know, it's
Okay.
like all
Yeah,
day
yeah.
long. I think we're past that.
Yeah, it's a different life stage.
And it's a different life stage. So in order for us to stay engaged at this point, we need to do it in a way that works for our bodies and that is also not overwhelming to us, because we want to still work. And so if we do it, it will probably be more like in our community here every Saturday afternoon for
Yes.
a certain amount of weeks,
Yeah.
or something like that, where we can engage without it being so intensive in that way. But that's why the online work really,
I was
really,
going to say, and the online piece is just working so well that
yeah.
there you
And it's
go.
working for us and it's working for them.
I just wanted to be in your presence and to hug you and dance with you, touch you, and your energy is just so beautiful. It was just so
Thank you,
infectious,
Robert.
so that was just a personal
Understand.
I
call.
understand.
We enjoyed your
But I get
engagement.
it. I understand it. Is there any final messages you'd like to leave our audience with?
You know, yes, it's that this is a challenging time on the planet. And there are certainly so much division, so much different energies flying around, all the social media world, all the AI world, all the issues on the planet, the oppression, the people dying. And sometimes it can get really overwhelming. And so there's 2 things I would say is, one is that there's a way through. Every single person listening, every single person who wants it, there's a way through for you with grace. And that support yourself and get the information that you need so that you can feel empowered, because this can also be an incredibly empowering time and a really exciting time, because a whole context is dying, and it's easy to plug into the media reports of those death cries. But we can also start tuning into what's arising and what is the new that's being born. And that's beautiful, because there's a whole new context being born. And so always say, listen to the earth, listen to nature, go out in some beautiful place in nature and listen to nature, listen to your own heart, listen to your own core, because that's more important news than media news about where we're going. And then get the support that you need. So it's not be informed by the world, but be core informed by your own being and your own intuition and that deep connection with yourself, with the divine, and with nature. And that I keep on hearing, there's a new context being birthed. There's a new time, and we're all part of it who wants to be part of it. And there's a lot of beautiful things happening, a lot of amazing people who are doing incredible things, lots of innovation. So remember that, and to be heartened and to learn what you need to learn to feel empowered to be you and give your contribution during this time.
Yeah. And all I can say, I invite you to contemplate what is the nature of total integration.
Yes.
And to quest that discovery. What is total integration? And that will take you down a whole path of expansion and awakening us that you're wanting at this time.
Yeah, and also what's living freedom? Like to let yourself be freer and to start hearing those deep messages that you're giving yourself about where you belong, who you belong with, how it is, how you, what your dream, what your vision is, and trust yourself and start making changes and get support to make those changes.
Thank you so much, River and Diamond. It's just been such an honor and pleasure to have you here. I hope that I get to see you live in person one day.
Yes.
But if not, then hopefully maybe I'll do the online program again. Thank you very much. Just so honored to have you here.
Thank you, Robert, so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
And also for your good work as far as introducing people to new possibilities.
Yes.
So thank you for your work.
Yeah.
Thank you.